Good evening. I'm Tony Marino. I'm the town manager for the town of Ipswich, and I am also a member of the Climate Resiliency Committee. Basically, we set this committee up back in the late fall, right in November, and we've been meeting ever since. And one of the first initiatives we took on, and was listed really in our charge, was to take care of the necessary steps for Ipswich to become a green community. As you can see from the slides, I'm going to run through a few slides here, and then we'll open it up for questions. We've got all the committee members here. The Green Community Program was authorized by the Mass Legislature through the Global Warming Solutions Act of 2008. It established by the state to provide energy reduction grants to towns and cities through energy conservation programs. The program reviews applications, designates green communities, provides startup grants and competitive annual grants for which designated green communities may apply. Next slide, please. So what is required for Ipswich to become a green community? First, we must meet all the 5 Green Community Program criteria, and I'll get into those in a few minutes what they are. We need to prepare the Green Community Program application. The Select Board, in their capacity as the elected body for the town, and also in their role as ELD commissioners, will vote to approve participation in the program. And that's a 2-part approval, one for the Become a Green Community, the second to authorize the ELD to charge the additional fee, which we'll get into in a minute. Ipswich also must commit to working toward a plan to reduce energy use in the town by 20% in a 5-year period. That's one of the criteria as well. And Ipswich must levy a special charge on electric ratepayer bills, which help them fund the Renewable Energy Trust Fund, which is managed by the Clean Energy Center. Next slide, please. So the 5 criteria to become a green community. First off, we have to provide zoning and designated locations for as-of-right sitting or of renewable or alternative energy generating and or manufacturing facilities. Ipswich completed this in 2010, so we've already checked that box. The second is adopt an expedited application and permitting process under which Criterion 1 facilities may be cited, and the permitting process shall not exceed 1 year from the date of initial application. Requires a letter from the town council to verify, which we will get, and this is already included in our zoning bylaw, so we can check that box. The one that's taking the most work and the one we've been working on most diligently is the establish an energy use baseline inventory for all municipal buildings and adopt a comprehensive 5-year energy reduction plan to reduce baseline by 20% in 5 years. Both Michael Johnson and Frank Ventimiglia have been working on that diligently over the last 3 or 4 months, and I thank them for their efforts, but that's been an ongoing project, and we've actually reached out to Mass Area Planning Council, MAPC, for some help with that, so we may be bringing them in to take us to the finish line on that. One of the things I was working on was preparing a fuel-efficient vehicle purchase policy, which is in front of all the board members there on the table. It commits the town, both the select board and the school committee will need to sign off on this and vote it, to purchase fuel-efficient vehicles as we move forward and whenever commercially available and practicable. And lastly, which is something we accomplished at the special town meeting last October, adopt the Mass Stretch Energy Code, so that box is checked. So really what's left for the town to do is Criterion 3 and 4. 4 is just about done and just needs the vote, and then 3 we're still working on. Next slide, please. Who are the green communities? There were over 240 green communities in Massachusetts, 68% of all municipalities in the Commonwealth. Of all of these 240, 17 are like us and have municipal light plants. And of the 17 municipal light plant communities, 2 became green communities by levying the kilowatt charge, 0.0005 kilowatt charge, as is done for all municipalities served by investor-owned utilities, which most people just don't know it, and it's on their National Grid or Energy Star bill. Next slide, please. So what are the costs of being a green community? I want to make sure I'm on the right slide there. Anyway. Ipswich would need to contract with and remit an annual fee to the Renewable Energy Trust to remain in the Green Community Program. The fee would be payable versus that 0.0005 kilowatt electricity sales to the ELD customers. The average residential customer uses 670 kilowatts per month, so an average monthly charge would equal 34 cents or about $4 per year per customer. At the current time, this charge on all electricity sold by the ELD is approximately $55,000 a year, is what Ipswich will be paying into that Renewable Energy Trust Fund on a yearly basis.
Could I ask you just a clarification on that?
Sure.
So $4 per customer times 6,000 residential units is like 24,000. So the balance is coming from where?
The commercial side, I believe, because it's all customers, it's not just the residential.
Right, so 30 plus thousand
Yep.
is coming from the commercial sector.
Correct. And remember, that's an average, so some will pay more, some will pay less, but yeah. Next slide, please. So the benefits of becoming a green community. In year one, right off the bat, Ipswich would receive an initial grant, approximately $146,000. That would be used to begin implementing energy conservation measures identified in our energy reduction plan. In the subsequent years, we can apply for up to $250,000 a year to pay for additional conservation measures identified in our energy reduction plan. And 10% of each, the grants for each year can be used for administrative costs. An initial assessment of the cost benefits of the Green Community Program conservatively estimates the grants received in energy cost savings for Ipswich and projected net annual financial benefits in the first 20 years, and a cumulative estimate in the range of $1 million. Next slide, please. In addition, the town, its residents and businesses will have access to the resources of the Clean Energy Center to fund clean energy and renewable projects. Funds from the Green Community and the Clean Energy Center resources can address conservation of all energy uses, not just electricity, unlike those currently funded by our ELD Sustainability Fund. Reducing municipal energy use and costs frees up funds in the budget for other important needs like schools, fire and safety, and climate change adaptation. Access to the Clean Energy Center will enable residents and businesses to reduce their energy and use costs. Slide, please. I think this is the graph showing all of the...
Yeah, I actually wanted to
Sure.
Put this in there, and this, of course, the color doesn't come out as well. It's Carolyn Britt, One Shagbark Woods. I wanted you to see, because we could have shown you a map of where the 240 green communities are, but I thought this was more telling. This is towns that have grants and programs from the Clean Energy Center. And you can see where the gaps are is where there are municipal utilities who aren't members. So up in the Ipswich-Rowley area, there's very little. There's a couple of different programs that the Clean Energy Center has made available to any community, but you can see the rest of the state is happily taking advantage of these programs, but we're not. So, thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Next slide, please. So some of the Clean Energy Center program areas here for residential, you've got clean heating and cooling, low-interest solar loans, wood stove changeouts. For government and nonprofits, they've got innovations at wastewater treatment plants, wind energy development, deploy clean energy and infrastructure to support mass business development, solar for municipalities, clean heating and cooling. And for businesses, many of the above programs are available to them as well. Next slide, please. So what successes have other green communities had? Other green communities in the region have had the following successes through the years. Hamilton, a neighboring town, $620,000 in grants since 2010. Wenham, $705,000. Manchester by the Sea, $294,000. Topsfield, $213,000. Beverly at $1.224 million, $892,000. And Hanover, a town where I came from and has similar population to Ipswich, became a green community in 2011 and has received a total of approximately $1.8 million in grants since then. And the estimated annual savings was about $189,000 a year in 2017. And I will say, with regard to that, to this day, and I can say it now, Hanover still has not hit the energy reduction plan. So they still haven't hit the 20%. They're still working towards that, and they're still able to get grants along the way. So I don't want to think there's a tie to that. If we don't hit it, we're not going to be eligible for grants anymore, because that's not the case. And I think that's it for slides. So we do have the committee here to answer any questions, but I wanted to get this in front of the boards, because we'll be back in probably the second meeting in April, I think was the original plan, to come back and request that the, answer any additional questions, or possibly at that point request for the board to take a vote for, submit Ipswich to become a green community. I can give a little more guidance on criteria 4, which you have in front of you, the fuel efficiency policy. That'll basically tie the town to be buying fuel-efficient vehicles moving forward. Criteria 4 is listed on the website, and currently, and it doesn't list it in the policy because we just say this changes from time to time, but currently, a two-wheel drive car would have to hit a miles per gallon of 29 miles per gallon. A four-wheel drive vehicle is 24 miles per gallon. Two-wheel drive minivan would be 20 miles per gallon. Four-wheel drive minivan, 18. Two-wheel drive pickup truck would be 17 miles per gallon. Four-wheel drive, 16. And then sport utility vehicles, two-wheel drive would be 21, and a four-wheel drive SUV would be 18. So, the standards are there, but they're not, they certainly can be met within a, currently gas fleet that we have, and moving forward, we'd have that option. While we'll look to go electric or hybrid, for some of the police, DPW needs, gasoline and/or diesel would still be required, and we can still meet that, so.
Mr. Chairman? Tony, thanks for that presentation. I wonder if you can tell us, so when you come back in April, what more will you know that you can tell us that's in here? So for instance, will you have a sense for what we could accomplish in 5 years?
Yes, by then we'll have a better handle on the energy reduction plan. We certainly know what sort of projects we'll be looking for, but right now we're in the process of doing energy audits and making sure we, when we say we're going to install a high-efficiency boiler, what that, what our current number is for fuel usage versus what we anticipate it'll be, so we can calculate the, the delta between the two.
Okay. On slide 6, you talked about estimated savings. Can you talk about, estimated economic benefit? I think you said it's a combination of grants and energy cost savings for Ipswich. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit more about that estimate and how it was derived?
With regard, that I will let...
Today we're going to save a total of $1 million over 20 years. How did you get that number, and what is it?
I'll defer to one of the committee members who generated that. You want to handle that one, Mike?
Sure. Mike Johnson, 1 New Mill Place. So that estimate was based on a very conservative analysis that Michael Schaaf had conducted. Let's see. We have actually some copies of that spreadsheet with the estimates. He conducted 2 estimates. One was a sort of a reasonable conservative estimate, where we reach a 20% energy reduction in the 5 years, and that showed about $2.3 million net cumulative benefit for the town. And I can go into the specifics of how the assumptions made there if you like. And then a scenario 2, which was we meet the 10% energy reduction in the 5-year time frame, and the results of that analysis showed about just under $1 million net cumulative benefit. And
okay. So you
happy, go ahead.
You said 20, the way you characterized the 20% savings was conservative, meaning that your expectation when you come in will be some number different than that, higher, better than that. Is that correct?
So what I meant by a conservative estimate is based on a few assumptions. One would be that we only receive 2 grants in the 20-year period. One for $200,000 in the 2nd year and one for $250,000 in the 4th year, but no other grants thereafter.
Okay, I wrote it wrong. I thought I heard you say that the 20% reduction in energy use was conservative, but that isn't what you said.
That's not what I'm referring to. That was based on a 20% energy reduction. The conservative part was really only those 2 grants that we'd received. Okay. Presumably, we would be applying for grants, if not every year, every other year or so. We might not get every one of them, but I think to say that we would only receive 2 grants, $200,000 and $250,000 in a 20-year period is very conservative.
So how does that work in the math of the $1 million though? So okay, so that's 500,000 right there in grants, right?
It's a combination of grants received and energy reductions cost savings through energy reduction.
So can I try the arithmetic? So I think what you said was two $250,000 grants over 5 years, so there's 500,000. And the balance of the $1 million then would be made up by energy savings.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, I get
And
it.
we have a spreadsheet that we can share. I don't know if we have any copies.
Yeah, maybe before the next meeting, that would be helpful. I just wanted to get a sense really for, how you came to that estimate.
Yeah, Michael, happy to pick it up from here if you like, because he conducted the analysis.
Thank you.
Why don't you reach down there and pull that other one down? I won't be able to. So the real value here is in energy reduction or avoided costs. And the principal differences between the two scenarios is in one scenario, we assume a 20% reduction in energy costs, which is what the program is about. The other one is more conservative, saying, well, we don't make it. We just save 10%. So the positive benefits relate to the grants that are received and the energy savings that we achieve through the investments of these grants in a new boiler system or whatever the case may be. This is a calculation of a net benefit. So there's also a cost associated with this, and those costs relate to the annual charge for the ratepayers. We've integrated that as a town-wide analysis. You'll see there on the first item on your left, the Renewable Energy Trust Fund charges residential, commercial, industrial. That's based on the kilowatt hours utilized in 2018. And then we've assumed for an application preparation cost that we may hire somebody, just again to be conservative for this building needs analysis and the plan that Tony just mentioned. And then thirdly, the town also will be paying more for its electricity, and you'll see that charge there, the beginning at $2,800. Over time, I've increased these as presuming the electrical costs increase, so you'll see those assumptions above there as well. And in the lower scenario, I think the costs are the same, but the benefits change because again, the key factor is the town energy savings. So you see there on scenario 2, town energy savings are $50,000 in year 3, whereas they're $100,000 in year 1 in scenario number 1. But those continue over time because we're still saving the dough if we, in contrast to not having made those investments to reduce our costs. So then what I've calculated is a net present value. This is basically a valuation of money over time, the notion being that money that's in our hands now is worth more than money that's in our hands 5 years from now, not only because we could use the money now, but also because it's likely to depreciate in value, and that's indicated by a discount rate. The discount rate here is 3%, which is more than inflation, so it's a conservative estimate, I believe, of the total value to the town.
Couple of questions, Michael. So looking at this first scenario, are you assuming a 20% savings on year 1?
No.
Okay. Where does how does it escalate, and where do we hit 20%?
So what you see then, let's just focus on scenario 1. You see there, in year 1, we see the startup grant. Year 2, we receive a $200,000 grant. We invested in some effective energy conservation measure, and we begin to yield savings in year 3. So you see there, town energy savings in year 3 are $100K.
Okay.
So we have to make the investment before we can yield the results.
Yep.
And over time, I'm presuming again, looking at this, that in a couple years, we get another $250K. We make an investment to improve energy efficiency, and it increases to the full 20%, which is $200K. Downstream, I increase that a bit as our energy costs, presuming our energy costs would increase, therefore our savings would increase.
Okay. So if we look at Hanover, the example that Tony gave us, they are 8 years into their program, and they're not at 20%. So we are estimating that we will hit 20% savings in year 5, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yeah,
Okay,
in that first scenario,
and, okay,
which is what the objectives of the program are. They want you to do it in 5 years, so I just assumed, let's assume that we do that.
okay.
Just a follow-up, so I think one of the questions I asked was whether you might have better information about exactly where you might focus. So for instance, if I take a look at that scenario one that, Michael, that you just went through, to me, it kind of suggests that that first project where we get the $200,000, right, in year 2, it's got a super quick payback, right? Because it pays back in 2 years. I'd be eager
begins
to
to
see
yield
what
the next year.
project is like that, that's going to
Yeah.
pay back in 2 years,
It begins to yield the next year, that's the assumption.
right? We get the $200,000 grant in year 2.
Right,
And then the energy savings are $100,000 in year 3 and $100,000 in year 4. That kind of suggests to me, all right, we paid ourselves back for the $200,000 grant in 2 years. Right?
so, I don't, what type of
Well, that's what I'm
work-
asking. We
yeah,
might
what-
see that maybe in April, because I think they're digging into sort of the details, and I'm eager to see that.
Right. So I guess my follow-up question would be, how are we planning on integrating this with the school do initiative that we're doing, right? So we've launched a full facilities review across the municipality and the schools, assuming that we will be looking at energy conservation as part of that as well. So I want to be careful that we aren't duplicating efforts and getting in each other's way and creating inefficiencies. So how will that work? I'm not quite sure who
I can
answers that.
answer that question. This is being done in tandem with our facilities department. In fact, if we become a green community, our facilities department will be taking the lead on this project and be applying for the grants.
Okay.
So they'll be working in tandem with not only the facilities needs assessment, but our needs as a town overall.
Okay, great. So in the slide where we talked about 10% of the grants can be used for administration, will we be able to direct that 10% to our facilities department?
Correct. We can. That would be the choice
Okay.
of the town. In Hanover, we did use to pay some of the facilities costs, but that doesn't necessarily mean, it can be used for admin costs, doesn't necessarily have to be in the facilities department, but that certainly is one of the uses we could consider.
But given the enormity of what we're anticipating for need on the other side of that review, I would hope we would use every penny that we can get to support that
I
initiative.
would support that initiative, but I wouldn't want to speak for the taxpayers.
Tony, those surrounding communities that you listed, Hamilton, Wyndham, Beverly, Topsfield, the grants that they received, can you speak to how the schools were included in that grant money and what steps they took to start this, get this ball in motion?
I can look for the information. I don't have that off the top of my head. I don't know what those towns did. I didn't do enough. We got those totals from the Green Communities Program. I don't know if they show exactly what they did. Maybe some of the other committee members have some of that information.
Yeah, well, we can tag team.
That's all
Yeah,
right.
I mean, the Green Communities website does have, by community, over the course of the time they participated, what projects they paid for. And I would say, just having scanned them a few different times, that the schools probably accounted for easily half of the projects. And,
do you know-
they did it however they're organized, if they have a a facilities department like we do, and, they
I guess
work
I
it
was
out however
looking,
they-
yeah, I think I was looking for more specific steps that they've taken in regard to the schools, whether it be solar panels, whether it be, retrofitting lights, what types of steps have they taken to
Well, I
use that
can,
money?
I know, I can find your email, I'll send you the website, and you can
That'd be
walk
great.
around it and look at what they have.
Thank you.
The schools are part of it, they're part of the program.
No, I know that, I get that, and I just was curious as to when the allocation is divided up, what steps do the schools then take to use that funding?
Well, every year where you have to apply for a specific grant, so other than the 146,000, which I think we've been discounting a little bit comes in year one, you get the application accepted, you get the 146,000. But every year after that, you would have to, participate. We want to do this particular project in this building. So, you know, we would be putting together that
Thank you.
specific list.
With regard to the payback you're talking about, I mean, one of the things we're looking at, and I'm working with Chris on that, is the heating system at the middle school, high school. I mean, that's going to be our biggest bang for the buck. It's probably our most inefficient system currently, and that, we've already talked to our heating system. You look to upgrade that, put a high-efficiency boiler and or heating system in there, and that's going to be our biggest bang for the buck as far as return on investment, as it's our largest building in the inventory. So that'll be one of the first things we'll be looking at right away, which will help us hit that number.
I have a couple quick questions.
Yep.
My first question is, out of these 17 communities, you said that 2 of them contribute through their surcharge. So does that mean that there are more than one way to pay for the town's obligations? One way would be to do a surcharge with the electric bill, or another way, in theory, could be, paying up front or what have you?
Yeah, that would be up to, when we approve the budget for the ELD. I mean, certainly, the easiest way is to put the charge and, pass it off to the ratepayers. The other way is you could,
Yeah, I could
spitballing.
speak to
Yeah.
that.
There's other ways
Yeah,
you
you
can
don't-
reduce the money. Go ahead.
No, what they found is that some communities that have municipal light plants also have 1 or 2 or 3 customers who are served by an investor-owned utility. And somehow, in the way the law, whether it's the Green Communities Law or the municipal, I suppose it's the Green Communities Law, there was a way they could participate with just a few customers.
Okay.
So they found the loophole. We don't have it. We have 1 customer served by the Rowley Municipal Light Plant.
I see. And so is it a set fee that we have to pay each year? Is it a set dollar figure that we owe each year?
There's a set formula. It's 0.0005 cents per kilowatt hour sold, and that will appear on everybody's bill as a separate line item.
Okay, so it all depends on how much electricity is used. That's how much we're contributing to this program.
That's right. And so the electric light department per se doesn't have to, at the end of a year, write a check for $55,000 to Renewable Energy
Okay.
Trust Fund. They simply put it on everybody's bill,
I see.
and then, yeah.
Okay, and then, so my biggest concern, though, is who is responsible for setting the rate that goes to each kilowatt? Who's responsible for setting that 0.0005 per kilowatt hour rate?
It's in state law. I'm not exactly which law. It might be the Green Communities Act.
Okay.
It's been that way since that was passed in 2008.
So it's on the state level, so the municipality itself won't really have any say on the increase or decrease of what that charge would be?
That's right.
I just have a quick question. I know in creating this grid, you did a conservative estimate of grants that we could possibly receive. Is there a cap to the number of grants that a town can apply for?
There's only a cap on the amount every year. You're capped at $250,000 per year that
Okay.
you can apply for. And in my time in Hanover, I can tell you we didn't receive a grant less than $189,000. And from 2011 until the time I left.
And when you're in Hanover, how often were you applying for grants? Was it
Yearly.
Every year?
Every
Okay.
year. Yep.
Terrific, thank you.
You're welcome.
I got a question. So out of all the communities that are in here, it seems like there's this split at we're looking at 10% or 20%. How many communities have made it to the 20%?
I think it's something like 30 communities.
Yeah.
Okay, what
It's a
about,
smaller percent.
what about that 10%?
I don't know if they're sure if they track that. I'd have to look that up. I'll
Okay.
try to have the information for April, but I'm not positive on the 10.
Okay.
But
And then another follow-up is, are there matches with each of these? Like when we go to apply for a grant, is a match required every time? What's the typical match?
it depends on the project. I mean, it's project-based. If we're going for, boilers or whatever at the high school, that's going to be more than $250,000. So if we're doing that and that's our whole ask for the year, then, yeah, there'll be some portion of the town's capital plan that will have to
Okay,
offset the
But there's
increased
no match
expense.
requirement? Like we could ask
Nope.
for $100,000 and
We-
not be required to match?
correct.
Okay.
As long as we have the project and then there's a balanced budget at the end and
Yep.
you show that you did the work and there's a whole reconciliation that happens at the year end.
Okay.
So Tony, you were very clear on the steps that are needed to take advantage, get into this program. What are the steps to get out if we decide we want to get out?
I don't know, I would admit, I'd have to look into that. I'm not positive as far as how you'd get out. I never considered that as an option, so. Because I didn't want to give up the $250,000 in grants per year, so, but I can find out.
Well, you know, we can laugh about it, but this is, it's the right question to ask about any time we enter into a new agreement with the Commonwealth to accept some special laws, some special program, and it looks good going in, and I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying we should also say, you know, what's the route for us to get out if we decide it doesn't work for us?
Yeah, I'm not sure about green communities, but I'll let, if you want to jump in on the monies
Yeah.
to the electrical.
Yeah, the commitment we have to make to the Renewable Energy Trust Fund, so the 0.0005 cents per kilowatt hour, we can't get out of under current law.
Ever?
Well, I want to say one thing, yes, under current law, ever. But I think that, you know, one issue that we're dealing with here is who else is in the same position we are, and it's all the investor-owned utilities. They can't get out of it either. So I think if it were ever,
Yeah, but we get to choose. They didn't get to choose. We get to choose, right?
that's right, we get to choose to be irresponsible. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
If they decide they're going to triple the rate or quadruple the rate, we're answerable to the ratepayers and the taxpayers. So we need to be able to, on some level, give them assurances that we have an understanding of what the maximum liability could be to the average household.
Yeah, I think that, you know, all of those are issues, and at some point, we have to decide if we want to take that leap or not. But I think that, you know, we've got MWIC on our side. We all, Charlotte told us all about that. We have the investor-owned utilities in the same position that we're in. I think that we're going to see just dramatic changes in the utilities industry in the next 10 years. And, yeah, things will change. And I think that the municipal utilities have gotten a huge break so far. And, you know, who knows where that's going to go. I just want to mention a couple of things, in part before the students have to leave. But on the bigger issue, you know, it's pretty common knowledge out there, and how do we deal with, you know, the challenges that we all face going forward. And it's pretty wide agreement that the only choice we have is electrification, because it's the only energy that can be produced by renewable energy. So I think that, you know, when you look at that, potentially in the next 20 years, we have to take all of the energy used in our economy and have it come from electricity. That's a huge change. And there will be changes in how we pay for electricity, who pays for it, who controls it, and, you know, we can take the conservative approach and say, well, we just don't want to do anything because we're afraid that it's going to change, or we can say, we've got to be part of this because of these students and because of the young people. And I think that they all came here this evening because they really care about these issues. And so we can have the, you know, the nuts and bolts conversations about about the dollars and cents and the risks and everything else. But I think we have to keep our eye on the big picture. And the big picture is, for me at my age, and some of you others, is, you know, what we leave behind. And I can't face these kids, and, you know, thanks. I'm going to get you for that. Casey Wright, who played Greta Thunberg's TED Talk about what we need to do for the children. So I will put my soapbox.
So thank you, Carolyn. I think, you know, it's important to keep the big picture in mind as we think about this. So this is, you know, I look at this, it's kind of like, so this is sort of like, you know, changing the withholding on your taxes so that you get a bigger refund in April, you know. This is, we're paying them up front, and they're going to give it back to us, you know. So we pay them $1 million in net present value in our increased electric rates, and we get, you know, hopefully we get 600,000, 700,000 back pretty quick, and maybe some more over time. But
Yeah,
you know, honestly, we would not be spending this money if we don't sort of agree to this program, because it's kind of like, it's like a forced saving program for us. You know, for us to say we're going to add $700,000 to our capital budget in the next 4 or 5 years to do energy savings, I probably won't make it, you know, but if we take this step and agree to this, you know, it'll happen, so.
Chairman, if I can, so we had a presentation and a discussion of this in the electric subcommittee, and there were a couple governance issues, a couple questions that arose, that again, I don't think they necessarily eliminate this as a great option, but, you know, you touched on one, and the idea is it's permanent. Another one is the lack of input to the programmatic piece, you know, that there's no input from us on what the grant is next year, or 5 years from now, or 2 years from now. That,
I thought
whatever the
we don't
grant
choose,
offering is.
we don't choose what to apply for?
They give you a menu, but there's no input into that menu, really. Again, relatively minor, because it sounds like the history is that the grant offerings are robust. So it might be relatively minor, but that was one thing. And then the third thing was that we would be voting as commissioners to take ratepayer money and basically transfer it to the municipal government, right? That's what we're doing. We're creating a tax on the electric, on the ratepayers to bring over here. It's not a small issue from a governance sense, because the selectmen, when they serve as commissioners, are serving as electric commissioners, right? And our mission there is to give the best deal for the ratepayers. Now, you know, it's a bit of splitting hairs, because most of those people are also taxpayers, but they're not all taxpayers. And your mission as a commissioner, you just need to go in with your eyes open if you vote as a commissioner to apply that fee, that you're transferring the money from the electric department to the municipal department. It's not like we can just, as selectmen, cavalierly say, you know, we're gonna raise, when we raise that rate, we raise it as electric commissioners.
But you're sort of doing a little of that with your energy conservation fund that you set aside, right?
But it goes back to the governance question, right?
Who gets the money
As
at the end of the day?
commissioners, we make the decisions.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree with you.
What's done there, yeah. I mean, it's, again, those are things, my sense is the board might get over, but, you know, the real things that if you take this job seriously, you have to consider, because you're at that moment, you're a commissioner, and you control that money, and you're handing it all, you know, it's a shell game and a bit. You're sending it back to the municipal government for them to manage it. And I'm sure that it'll be in very capable hands, Tony. It's just, again, it's something I think we should take seriously as commissioners, that's all.
Oh, without a doubt. And one thing I want to point out, remember that this, the money we're paying into the Renewable Energy Trust Fund and through the Clean Energy Center program areas, even if we were to not be a green community, we decided, you know, we do it for 5 years and we're out, the town would still, even though you're paying that fund, there are still programs, and there'd be an education piece along with this. There's still programs that our residents and business owners could benefit from. So I don't want to say like, oh, we're in for life and we don't get anything back, because there is still additional benefits that residents and homeowners can take advantage through these clean heating and cooling, low-interest solar loans, you know, wood stove change-out.
We have those already. We don't have to pay into the program.
We have those for electric only. You don't have them for natural gas. You don't have them for the other, you know, fueling options that are out there, other than just, you know, it's only on the electric side right now. So it's a whole, you know, I just want to say there is an ancillary benefit here than just, you know, we're not only the green community. There are other benefits to the residents and the business owners.
So when we're talking about buying into a program, right? And if I understand this correctly, we're talking about $55,000 a year. Is that correct? So we're talking $4 a year a customer for the public, right? From the time that I've spent here on the select board, if we had an ELD hearing and they were talking about raising it to $4, raising our rates $4 a year to build capital, or whatever reason, I don't think anybody here would bat an eye, and we wouldn't hear a single word from anyone in the town about increasing a rate for $4 over an entire year. It's really not much of a commitment, and then you get, you know, this huge opportunity to get all these grants back. So I don't think that we want to. I mean, I get it's a decision that we're locked into. I get it. Janice. But it's $4 a year.
Well, but I think that's the point. Well, it's $4 this year. We don't know what it will be next year or the year after or the year after. And we don't have any control over that. So that's the discussion. And I think if we are going to be good financial stewards here, these are the questions we have to be asking. because we can't just do it because it feels good and because it looks good this year. We have to be thinking about the long term. So I don't see that there's any harm in looking for more information.
I'm not saying it's harm. I'm just,
I have a couple questions. So I'm not sure this is an entirely original thought, but a couple FinCom meetings ago, we were getting a briefing on the program, and I asked if the Climate Change Resiliency Committee looked at other solutions. So I'll ask it again tonight. Have we looked at other approaches to this very same problem? Case in point being, it seems like this is something we could put together ourselves as a town. I'm not sure why there's hissing, but I mean, we could, tell me if I'm wrong here, we could vote in our own increase, our own surcharge, and keep the funds entirely in town coffers, and every year dedicate that money towards green community initiatives without tying ourselves into a program that takes a lot of the, and the other point of this too is that from a capital planning perspective, this makes it very difficult. We don't know what we're going to get approved for on a year in and year out basis. We don't, we're trying to put together a capital plan here. We might say, okay, in 2021, we're going to go for this, and then we don't get the grant for it, and now it's 2022, and we miss the opportunity to do something else. So I'm brand new to all of this here, but it seems like a solution we could actually maybe even tackle better by doing it in-house and keeping our autonomy and flexibility here.
I think the point is that we have that fund, and we do that now. The fund doesn't return what the green communities grants promise to return. That's sort of the rub. That's the difference, is that at least the promise from the history is that the return on the $55,000, as Willie pointed out, would be greater with the green communities initiative.
So then I have a follow-up question, and I think Carolyn would be the best person, because I don't know if it was 9 months or 12 months when you came ahead of FinCom and talked about this. One of the components was it probably made sense to have a grant writer brought on at the town level in order to maximize the benefits of this. How much does a grant writer cost? Is it $55,000 a year, or is it $100,000 a year? Is it $110,000 a year? I think we make a mistake sometimes by saying, oh, it's only going to cost $4. It's a cup of coffee. What happens if things start to increase, both at the state level that we can't get out of, and we say, oh, maybe we should get a grant writer? That's $50,000, plus benefits, plus retirement. I'm just saying, we lose all the flexibility, and I don't really see this as a problem we can't tackle as a town.
Well, you raised some good questions, but I want to bring your attention to the fact of how the Green Communities Program is funded. And it's funded from Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative funding, which Massachusetts collects about $40 million a year, the bulk of which is put into conservation, and the bulk of it into the Green Communities Program. So we're not taking our $55,000 and saying, geez, instead of, so our current conservation program in the Electric Light Department, which funds only electric cleanups and conservation. We take the entirety of our 0.002 cents per kilowatt hour that we charge and put it directly into this kind of work only, has no comparison to a Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative funded program, which is like a regional cap and trade program with, I think, 11 northeastern states. That can address all of our energy needs. So we can be insular and say, well, we just want to keep it here. We're going to keep our $55,000 and make all these huge differences. Or are we going to, take a little bit of a risk, or maybe a lot of risk, in a rapidly changing business and, political environment, and really try to get much more out of it? And I guess it's obvious where I would stand on that.
What about the grant writer question, though? That seems to be a good one, that perhaps it's a good investment, but I know that I've heard that conversation both at the ELD subcommittee and other meetings about the idea of having someone who can dedicate time.
And that will be a larger commitment and a larger scope of work than just the green communities. I don't need a grant writer for this program. I can run this through facilities. We'll get the grants every year. We don't need a grant writer for this. I don't need to add any expense for this program. The grant writer you're referring to is, remember, this is Climate Resiliency Committee. This is just one small piece. There's, Governor Baker announced today they're giving $10 million in climate change funding over the next bunch of years through the MVP program, which, Ethan Parsons is working on. And I'll remind everybody, there's a listening section on March 27th. This is one of the final step in the process. So 6:30 to 7:30 right down in room C. That's going on as well. So this is a multifaceted thing. And at that point, we'll look for funding and we'll look to maybe bring in a grant writer, and not just a grant writer, but somebody to manage those projects. Because we're doing, I'm going to mess up the acronym, but the grant we just got for Ardula Road with the trustees and, what Alicia's working for in conservation for, restoring the banks. I mean, there's multifaceted stuff we're working on here, and this is just one small piece of it. But for me as a town manager, this is another tool in the toolbox. I need access to this grant and these funds to, work with our capital plan to have the ability to, improve the program. And this program's growing. I mean, just this year, they added the thermal envelope. So now part of the green community is also the building envelope in the exterior, and so now we can bring some insulation projects possibly forward. So it keeps growing and changing as the, because obviously 10 years in, the grant applications are going down because a lot of communities have done all this work, so they're looking for ways to increase energy in other areas, so, or reduce energy consumption, actually.
Nishan?
Yeah.
Yep, thank you. I wish it were true, Chris, that we had capital funds in the budget to fund at even the conservative level here. It's the most lucrative budgets that I've seen in recent years. We had more than $1 million a while ago, all which flow from free cash, from surplus income. We don't have a program to raise capital for capital needs. We're dependent on the state for much of our capital investment. FinCom over the years has discussed that, geez, maybe we should recommend to the selectmen or town meeting that we take 1% off the top for capital. We've never done that because I think we thought that it wasn't sellable given how tight the budgets were for operations. And we saw for years how the school committee chose reasonably teachers over building. Because we didn't have the dough to fund the building, you made the choice that the kids' education were important, and most important, and we could get by with a deteriorating building. So we in this town, this isn't Hamilton, this is not Newton. We don't have that kind of surplus income in this economy now, where the Massachusetts economy is roaring. This town's economy is not roaring. The budget total this year is 2.8%, is it, Tony, increase? I think it is. Is it something of that sort? So it's not a substantial increase, and I don't see that coming unless we change policy to raise capital. We're still going to have capital budgets that are far below this. And to me, the bet on 4 hours a month is a really good return on investment.
I just want to add something. I mean, we're worrying about not having an exit strategy, not having a strategy if this doesn't pan out. I mean, we have a hard time of, we seem to be followers sometimes as a town and not leaders and let other communities lead. If this green community doesn't pan out in 10 years, 20 years, we will not be the only community that's disappointed. Legislation is not forever. If it doesn't pan out, and we are among many communities that says this isn't any good anymore, then legislation will change. I think we shouldn't be afraid. I guess I suggest that people not be afraid of what the future may bring, because if the future doesn't bring what we need in this town, we're not powerless. Legislation can change.
I guess my only point to that would be, what if it doesn't work in 10 years? Yeah, I know she just said that, and the point is that that's 10 years that we just lost, where we could have been very proactive on our own. Well, I'm not understanding what the issue here is. I'm not saying this is something we shouldn't do. If anything, I'm saying we should actually maybe do more than the .005. If it's a cup of coffee, it's a cup of coffee. Let's make it a lunch. I mean, why can't we increase our dedication and keep the funds here and do it ourselves?
Chris, if I a quick counter to that.
Can I just mention, I'm
Hold
sorry,
up, one
are we
second,
allowed
hold
to
up, one
speak?
second. One second. Just, I get, it's not a bad question to ask. I think two of my responses that the first one, we haven't done it yet. And if it was that easy, we would have done it. The second is that we brought in a town manager who has a ton of experience with this, started from being in the facilities and permitting and worked all the way up. And he came up and said, if we're going to do this, this is what we need. So if there's anyone who, I believe if there's anyone who could come up and we could say, hey, can we do this on our own? You'd think this guy would have a plan. But this guy's plan is, we need to go for the green communities. That's the plan. So I think we need to listen closely to that.
I think we're listening closely, but I think we're asking questions too, so.
I agree, and I think that, if we're going to move forward with this, that I would like to know what those other 15 communities did to become green communities without the surcharge on the ratepayers. So I just want to make sure we have asked every question and that we're making the decision that is right for this town, not the other 87 communities, but what's right for this town, so that we can weigh our options and so that we can go to the taxpayers and we can give them full and complete information. We've been in programs like this before, and we've watched as they've waned and waxed. I mean, we had a very rich conversation just last week on the circuit breaker. Circuit breaker fund used to be a 100% reimbursement. We've had years when it's 62%. So there's no, and we've had no recourse there. We're watching now as many Massachusetts communities, our neighbors, are trying to get themselves out of central dispatch, which was supposed to be the saving grace for the North Shore. And it turned out to be a disaster and a financial albatross for those communities. So this is the time to ask the questions. This is the time to get as much information as we can possibly get so that we're making the best decision we can possibly make. And if those questions are uncomfortable for people, then I apologize, but this is what we are here for, is to make the decision well.
I'll say also, I've heard multiple times, Willie, you just said it right there, is the first reason why you disagree with my stance on it is because we haven't done it yet. Where's the leadership? Let's do it. Like, I don't get why we're just punting the whole thing to the state when we could maybe put some thought behind it. My original question was, has the committee thought through other solutions? It's not a crazy question. I'm literally asking, have they? I'm wondering if it was a climate change resiliency committee or it was a how do we go become a green community committee. I think that's closed-minded. I think sometimes solutions can be thought through and they can turn out better for everybody. I'm not saying this isn't something we should do. I'm saying what has gone into it. Keep in mind, you're talking to a tri-board here where there are people who have other things that they're working on. We don't know all the details of this stuff.
Just a quick answer to that. There's some people in the room, I wasn't included, who worked on a climate action plan in 2011. It was published. And not very much happened. I think that between 2009 and 2011, when there was a lot of work going on and the wind turbines, came to town. And then things pretty much quieted down. So a couple years ago, we said, oh, let's refresh that. Maybe we can get some more energy going. And so we did, I had to go to town meeting and a citizen petition to get the town to set up another committee. And we updated the climate action plan just for what the town can do, which is, which is then what came another 2 years of work, and we're here now. So to just leave the perception out there that the town really hasn't had an opportunity or didn't know or whatever, a lot of us have been working hard since 2009, 10 years ago, to get this done. And no, it hasn't happened, not nearly in the way it should.
Go ahead. Yep, please.
Thank you. Charlotte Kahn, 39 Spring Street. I just wanted to mention the sustainability fund of the ELD was mentioned. That is $258,000 a year that ratepayers pay into the fund. We've had a natural experiment. I believe that was created after the 2011 Climate Action Plan, and it's really been, I would say personally, quite a failure. It really has not resulted in the kind of actions that it could have. It's a huge potential that has not been taken advantage of. I actually brought flyers tonight to publicize the rebates and incentives that we have because people don't even know about them on the residential side, and I'm happy to pass those out, pass those around. So we've had a natural experiment. We know what happens even when we have resources. So now we have a new town manager. He's been through this in Hanover. He supports this. They're saving $189,000 a year just in energy savings, and they're still able to apply every year for another grant up to $250,000. That seems like a very compelling argument to me. And again, I think we should rely on the expertise of our new town manager. Thank you.
Good.
Hi, Helen Weatherall, 44 Fellows Road. And thank you, Charlotte. I think that was really well spoken. I'm actually listening with the ears of the young guys behind us here, and I'm wondering if everyone's reading the papers as eagerly as I am. I think you probably are. I heard Tony, the town manager, wonderful new town manager, use the term climate change. I think that's a term we can accept in this room. And if so, can we remember we got these kids back here who can't really afford in 2019 to have the can kicked down the road anymore? Charlie just said that we've had programs that there's been very slow movement on this since 9-10 years. This has been moving so slowly. The other thing, Tony's been working on with Hanover and other towns, the green communities. What I'm thinking, I think it's a valid question. It's true. Is it something we could do here ourselves? I think that's an intelligent, straightforward question. But then I hear Tony say what this is a tool. This is a tool. It's been created. It's been put into play by a lot of communities successfully. So why would we want to reinvent that tool? It's a lot of work from us in Ipswich. Why not just embrace something that has been tried and proven to be successful in other communities? Let's do it for these kids. Let's do it for us. The climate change is not a pipe dream. Okay, thank you.
Sean Parker, 27 Turkey Shore Road. I don't think the kids are going to like me on this one, but I take a different view on this issue. And the thing that actually brought me over here was, and I know the intention of how you said it, but it's just $4 a year. It's never just $4. It's never just $4 a year because it's going to be $4 a year on your electricity rates. Then it's going to be $20 a year on your taxes. Then the state's going to charge you something different. So fighting an issue like this is never, it's just $4. So we need to look at the bigger picture of how does Ipswich fit into the macro view. Now, I am all for fighting climate change. I'm all for saving the planet. I'm all for cleaning plastic out of the ocean and all this other stuff. I'm all for Ipswich doing everything we can do based on the environment and our financial situation of cutting expenses. If we can save $2 million a year in electricity, regardless of the environment, I'm all for that. I think the gentleman, I forget which committee he's on, but he was saying, what could Ipswich do with this $50,000 if we weren't part of this program? So we're hearing this program saves communities this much money. Well, no, towns are part of that. It's not just this program. It's if Ipswich invests in vehicles that save fuel, that has nothing to do with this program. We're going to save money regardless of whether we're in the program or not. I say the town goes ahead with fuel-efficient vehicles even if we don't participate in this. But taking a step back and looking, our kids, I keep hearing our kids. Yes, we need to do stuff to fight global warming. But what everyone misses is the United States is already working on cutting fossil fuel use. We're already working on more energy efficient vehicles, buildings. This is a global issue, and what people just say is, it's just $4, let's do this. But what people miss is, we spend X number of dollars in the United States to fight global warming. We could spend 1/10 as much in strategic parts of the world, which brings us to more of a macro view. There are countries in Asia that literally dump trash in the ocean. They burn fossil fuels like crazy. This needs to be a global issue, and I don't think that the town needs to overexert itself to spend $4 a person per year. Because there's going to be a much bigger financial benefit to everyone if it is a more global issue and not just, let's spend $4 to buy more fuel-efficient cars. So yes, the kids, I want to save the planet for the kids. But we also have to look at the issue the right way and not just, well, if Ipswich spends $4 a year per household, we're going to save the planet. I hate to have this tone of voice, but I'm sitting watching this meeting, and it just sounds like it's $4 now, and then the next meeting it's going to be $20, and then the next meeting it's going to be $100. I just want everyone to take an actual view of how things work and not just, oh, $4 a year saves the planet. So I apologize for my tone, but I'm a little frustrated with the approach that some people take with this issue. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep, go ahead, Mike.
Quick question. So it sounds like there's been a little bit of concern with some questions that people have about this. Have we had anyone from the state come in to kind of be there to answer some of these questions? You know, maybe there's a cap on the amount of that gets charged over that 20-year span. Maybe, you know, it says within the legislation that it can't go above a certain amount, which kind of gives us some sort of comfort that they can't just out of the blue say, oh, it's going to go from 0.0005 to 0.1,
Right.
you know, overnight, and maybe have some more questions answered, in-depth analysis.
I mean, I think we've already had the conversation that they're going to be coming back to us sometime in April. So, you know, maybe if that's an option, we can have someone from the state, that would be great. Yep.
So for that, would it be helpful if we just kind of pooled our questions and got them to you, so that there's time to prepare?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if, you know, if all three committees want to send, you know, questions that they may have, they can go actually probably just straight to Tony instead of coming.
Okay.
Take one step away and have it go through
Sure.
me. So, you know, whatever questions you might have for the state representative, you know, send them to Tony. Sorry, Tony. Have them go to Tony, and he can get them
Okay.
to that representative, so he's ready for, or he or she is ready when they come visit.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I apologize if I've missed something, but is the intent to come back in April with follow-up, and when will action be taken on this? What's the anticipated timeline on that?
So the answer to the first one is yes, that was the original intent, or the intent was they were going to come make a presentation to us today and then come back in April for a secondary meeting. What do we have for a start date, Tony, or an implementation date, or at least an estimate of that?
The application, and with all the criterion checked, is due in October. So we'll
We
be
have
looking
until
at,
October to
right.
go through this in a couple
So you're
months.
looking for support from the three committees to go forward, or is it just?
Not today,
No, I'm not, I know that.
At some point in the future.
at some point, yeah.
Yeah, what's required is a vote of the select board to get in the green communities, and then the school committee comes in where they need to vote on the fuel efficiency vehicle policy.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, we can commit to having you a consolidated list of questions from the Finance Committee for April 1st. Is that soon enough?
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Carrie Cordima McCrae, 31 Heartbreak Road. Carrie Cordima McCrae, 31 Heartbreak Road. I didn't come here tonight for this. I'm glad I did. $4 a year for a taxpayer is minimal for what we would get back. I hope this town does their due diligence, which we should. But to totally deny this without doing a little more investigation is foolhardy. This is not going away. If we can capitalize on multiple towns and state and federal government to help us with climate resiliency, we should do this. I'm kind of appalled that so many people are just automatically putting up brick walls against it. We have 4 weeks before the selectmen have to vote, or till October before we have to decide. So I hope that we take the time to do our due diligence, but let's understand, we cannot do this alone. If it's $4 a year or a month, I'm willing to pay that, and I have a hefty utility bill. And I want to do that for my children. Thank you.
Jim Engel, 362 Linebrook Road, a member of the Electric Lights Subcommittee, and an early skeptic of this program, which my position has softened quite a bit from those early discussions. One thing that I want to make clear, and I'm a little disappointed that the answer to the question wasn't as forthright as it should have been. Under the current arrangement, there is no opportunity for the community, once it joins, to get out of the program. That should have been stated very clearly. That's the current law. One of my early concerns with the program had to do with governance. There is no opportunity for the community to change what they don't like, to move it in a direction that makes it more favorable to the community, and was an early concern on my part. We've had experience being part of organizations that we can't get out of. Essex County Retirement Board was a mess. What saved us was the fact that there was an opportunity for us to become involved in the governance of Essex County Retirement Board. And that took a lot of effort and a lot of time. We're members of a joint action agency called Massachusetts Municipal Wholesale Electric Company, MWIC. There's an opportunity for us to withdraw from MWIC. It's a long process. It takes 3 years, but we can withdraw. And it was actually the withdrawal of communities from MWIC that changed the nature of MWIC and made it into a very useful organization to the point where communities came back in. So it's a real concern about the Green Communities program in that area for me. And when I came to the point that perhaps we should be supporting this program, it was a proviso that we don't wait for the program to fail before we get legislation to change it, but we begin the process now. That we talk to our legislatures and have them change the program early on to give us more governance. I think another thing that's been missing tonight is that the $55,000, it's sort of a force multiplier, because the $55,000, the contribution from the individual communities is not the only source of funds, so that over time, on average, you should be seeing a benefit from the program in excess of the $55,000. I am concerned about a unilateral increase in the tithing that goes on. And that has to be addressed too with some legislation that allows communities to participate in determining what those numbers are. One thing to keep in mind too on a program like this is the 40 or so municipals are a small part of what's going on in this state, and the IOUs are not going to be there with us when we need them if this program fails to deliver what we think it should. The investor-owned utilities they'll just pass the number along. The investor-owned utilities rolled over on the program to begin with because they can just simply put it in their rates. And the only electric companies in the Commonwealth that have their ratepayers truly at heart are the municipals. And that shouldn't be lost. I want to make one comment about the sustainability fund at the light department. The light department budget contains $262,500 in the last few years, which goes into the sustainability fund. Is it a perfect program? No. Is it in need of improvement? Yes. But is it a failure? I think not. I think as you drive home tonight and see all of the LED streetlights, that's sustainability fund money. As you go into the schools and see lighting retrofits, that was paid for with a sustainability fund. So it's hardly a failure. It's not perfect. It needs improvements, but hardly a failure. So with some caution, I would support the Green Communities Initiative. I think these questions that have been raised, they should not be interpreted as putting up brick walls. They're responsible people asking responsible questions, and they deserve reasonable answers. And so I would encourage you to get your questions answered and make a decision. From myself, I'm aboard.
Thanks.
Carmel Valianti, 421 Linebrook Road. I live in Ipswich, but I worked for many years in Beverly. And I think the slide that was put up when it showed the different communities, Beverly had the most amount of money. You can correct me, because, yeah.
1.2 million.
Yeah, 1.2 million. And I worked at a nonprofit called Solar Now in Beverly, and I worked with the community in the schools, in the municipalities, and all the green programs that existed in the state 20 years ago up until today. And I can tell you that Beverly has only benefited by being a leader, both at the municipal level and at the school level. And yes, they're a city and we're a town. It's a little different, but they have, as the slide showed, they have garnered so much money, both from the savings and from all of the grants, and actually other grants and other programs that came from them because they were leading in the green field. Also, their students have greatly, their schools, I don't know how many of you know about their middle school, but it is now a leader in what's called STEAM. It's the older version of STEM, and they're highlighted all across the, really, this country, but all across the world. And it's all around the different projects that a lot of the green environmental movement has given to them. And so that is really something you really can look at, and the slide showed it, and it's actually exists. And that's all from benefiting from what they did as leaders 20 plus years ago. Thank you.
Can you just repeat your name one more time for us?
Carmel Valianti.
Can you spell that for me?
V-A-L-I-A.
Okay.
Hey, Nisha, can I make just one comment?
Yep.
So I think, you point to Beverly, if you look at the slide, you look at Hamilton or Wenham, the successes, right? They got $600,000, $800,000. Then you look at Topsfield or Manchester by the Sea, they got $200,000. To some degree, I'm it's like Jim, cautiously optimistic because I've seen our new town manager in action, and I believe he's going to try to live up to the promise that this has. But there are $200,000 for Topsfield since 2011. That's a failure if you're putting in $55,000, if the taxpayers are paying $55,000 per year.
I'll just point out
We
that,
should keep in mind it's the ratepayers, not the taxpayers, for both the IOUs and the municipal utilities.
I'll just point out that by and large, those communities that haven't received the same level of grants that others have is simply a function of not applying for a lot of the grants.
The leadership of the town
So-
manager is critical in this.
So you only get out of this program what you put into it. If you don't apply for grants, you're not going to get any grants, and that's kind of the way the program works.
Go ahead.
No, I just want to point out, I found on the Green Communities website their list of every community that has received any grants, and not just when they received the grants, but it also tells how much they received and what the project was. It's pretty impressive. So I urge you to take a look at it.
All right, so if we don't have any additional questions or comments on this, we're expecting the Climate Action Committee to be back in front of us sometime in April, and then, so we'll put that on our calendar and get everybody here for that meeting, and we'll do our best to make it a tri-board meeting again and see if we can have somebody from the state here for that meeting. So if you can, FinCom is committed to having questions in by April 1st. If you can too, that'd be great, and the select board will try to do the same. So, all right, thank you very much. On to our next agenda item.
One more question, or are they done?
Do you have a question, Jamie?
No.
You sure?
Are you sure?
Jamie, I want you to be happy.
So I just had a quick comment on your vehicle policy, right? Fuel-efficient vehicle policy.
Go ahead.
So I would have to say that probably, Tony, you may know the answer to this, 90 to 95% of the vehicle miles traveled in this town by municipal vehicles or exempt vehicles, right? Every school bus, every fire engine, every dump truck, every police car. I mean, if they'll take this, I think that's a home run, because it's not going to really
That's-
change anything.
Yeah, that's their
It's window
template.
dressing.
That's the template, fuel efficiency policy, so yeah.
I mean, it's almost a joke, but.
It is, but it commits you to, basically, and I will say in the town I used to work in, all we ended up buying hybrid was like the police chief's command vehicle, fire chief's command vehicle, like there weren't many that you would look for fuel efficient, because, like you said, most of them are exempt.
And those are the ones that put all the miles on.
Correct.
So the building inspector might have an efficient
We did get a
vehicle.
fuel-efficient one for the
Who
building
goes
inspector.
nowhere, so, okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
Mr. Chairman, before we begin,
Yep.
would you ask that the minutes reflect that the school committee officially joined the meeting at 7:40?
You get that? Yeah. So the school committee formally joined the meeting at 7:40?